Hey everyone, it's so good to be back with you. I was just sitting here thinking about how exhausted we get when we try to fix our own mental health in our own power. We act like we're free, but Second Peter tells us we're actually slaves to whatever has mastered us. Let's talk about that struggle of feeling frozen in our emotions.
It really is, it's just this profound bone-deep weariness,
Yeah,
isn't it?
absolutely. It is.
You can honestly see it in people's eyes before they even pull out a chair and sit down with us.
You really can see it. And, that weariness is exactly why we are sitting right here today at our favorite spot.
Yeah, the Crosstalk Cafe.
Exactly. So I just want to invite you, the listener, to just pull up a chair to the table with us right here at Peters Creek Baptist Church.
Grab a cup of coffee, just settle in.
Right, because today we really want to do a deep dive into the actual mechanics behind this exhaustion.
We really need to unpack the intersection of human psychology
Hmm.
and, the foundational recovery principles we walk through in this room every single week.
Yeah, and we're going to layer that with the ancient, just incredibly penetrating wisdom found in texts like Second Peter and Romans.
Right. Because we want to understand the architecture of denial. We want to know how true mental wellness actually begins.
But I think setting the stage for that exploration is critical right off the bat.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Especially regarding who we are in this conversation.
Yes,
Yeah.
because as we sit here at this table with you, we need to be incredibly clear about something.
Just because we serve as celebrate recovery leaders, it does not mean we have ascended to uh, some state of perfect emotional enlightenment.
Not even close. I mean, we're speaking to you directly from the trenches today.
Right. This is entirely a peer-to-peer journey.
Yeah. In this context, leadership simply means we have committed to the daily and honestly deeply uncomfortable work of staying out of denial alongside you.
Exactly. The principles we are unpacking today are tools that we have to pick up and use every single morning.
And sometimes multiple times a morning, to be honest.
Yeah, that is the truth.
Because the temptation to slip back into the driver's seat, to manage our own image, it is just relentless.
It really is. And that tension brings us right to the core of our discussion today.
Right, the sheer physiological and spiritual exhaustion of hiding our feelings.
We spend, just astronomical amounts of energy trying to maintain this facade.
Yeah, this idea that we have our lives perfectly compartmentalized and sorted out.
But the reality we see in the recovery materials, obviously in the biblical text, is that mental wellness doesn't begin when we finally manage to optimize or, quote unquote, fix ourselves.
No, it begins when we surrender to Jesus Christ as our one and only true higher power.
Right. It begins when we finally allow ourselves to feel the very things we've spent decades outrunning.
And to understand why feeling is so terrifying, I think we have to look at the trap we've built for ourselves.
The trap of false freedom.
Exactly. We think we are free because we are making choices to numb our pain, but we're actually caught in a very specific type of bondage.
2 Peter chapter 2, verse 19 diagnoses this condition perfectly.
Yeah, read that for us.
The text says, they promise them freedom, while they themselves are slaves of depravity, for people are slaves to whatever has mastered them.
Slaves to whatever has mastered them. I mean, that just forces a massive reevaluation of what mastery actually looks like, doesn't it?
It really does. Because in the Greco-Roman world where Peter was writing, slavery and freedom were these deeply complex social structures.
Right, it wasn't just a simple binary.
Exactly. Freedom often meant upward mobility through patronage. You would align yourself with the powerful benefactor.
Oh, interesting. So Peter is subverting that cultural norm entirely.
Yes, he's saying that the world offers a counterfeit patronage.
Wow. Yeah, the world and honestly our own internal voices of denial, they constantly offer us these false promises of autonomy.
We tell ourselves, I can handle this stress.
Right. Or I'm just having a drink to take the edge off.
Or I'm just isolating because I need some quote-unquote me time today.
Yeah. Or I'm just keeping the peace by not addressing the conflict in my marriage.
Exactly. We frame all of these coping mechanisms as the choices of a free individual.
We really think we are the benefactors of our own lives.
But wait, if we look at the broader cultural narrative right now, the primary message we are absolutely bombarded with is radical autonomy.
Oh, 100%. Follow your truth. Do what feels good in the moment.
Right, you are the master of your fate. The culture defines freedom as the complete and total absence of restraint.
So how do we reconcile that pervasive cultural message with what Peter is arguing about being mastered?
That is the big question.
Like if I am actively choosing to cope by, say, scrolling on my phone for 4 hours to completely ignore my anxiety, Society says that's my free choice.
Right, self-care.
Yeah, exactly. Self-care. So why is Peter calling that slavery?
Well, that is the ultimate paradox of human brokenness right there.
Break that down for us.
When we position ourselves as the ultimate authority, when we operate entirely in our own power, we are inherently limited by our own unhealed trauma.
Okay, yes.
Let's look at the psychology of it for a second. We think we are choosing freely, but our choices are actually being driven by a subconscious need to protect a wound.
That makes so much sense.
For example, if you have deep, unaddressed rejection trauma, and you freely choose to lash out in anger to push someone away before they can hurt you.
You aren't operating in freedom at all.
Not even a little bit. Your amygdala, the threat detection center of your brain, has completely hijacked your prefrontal cortex.
Oh, wow. So you are literally a slave to your own neurological defense mechanisms.
Precisely. Your reactions are dictated by past trauma, but they are masquerading as present autonomy.
So we think we're the ones steering the ship, right?
No.
But really, our unaddressed pain is the one with its hands firmly on the wheel. We're just sitting in the passenger seat, rationalizing the route.
That is a perfect way to put it. We are just rationalizing the route.
And to take that a step further, being mastered isn't always a spectacular, visible collapse, is it?
No, not at all. I think we tend to look for obvious addictions, right? Like substances or gambling.
Yeah, the things that make the news or ruin a career overnight.
But you could be mastered by a chronic, low-grade anxiety.
Yes.
You can be mastered by an obsessive need for perfectionism just to ensure that absolutely no one criticizes you.
Oh, that's a heavy one. Or you can be completely mastered by denial itself.
Right, where your entire relational life is dictated by the exhausting work of avoiding the truth.
And this mastery, it operates like a slow-moving fog. You don't wake up one Tuesday and suddenly find yourself mastered by a hang-up.
No, it begins microscopically.
It begins the very first moment we decide to stuff down a true feeling just to survive a difficult afternoon.
We just push the pain down. And because the brain is incredibly efficient at creating neural pathways, suppression just becomes our default setting.
Which transitions us directly into what the recovery materials highlight as one of the most devastating physiological and spiritual consequences of this process.
The freezing of our emotions.
Yes, the text explicitly asserts hiding our feelings, stuffing them down, living in denial, freezes our emotions and binds us.
Let's actually break down the mechanics of that freezing process. Why do we hide our feelings in the first place?
Well, we hide them because they are excruciating.
Exactly. If you've experienced betrayal, profound loss, or abuse, those emotions aren't just sad thoughts.
No, they register in the body as physical agony.
The human instinct is just to run from the burning building, so we suppress it.
But modern neurobiology and ancient wisdom both completely agree on this one thing. The body keeps the score.
It really does. Stuffing feelings down doesn't eradicate them.
They don't just evaporate into thin air.
No, the energy of that emotion gets trapped in our nervous system. We literally freeze them in place.
You know, when I try to visualize what you're describing, this idea of trapped, frozen emotional energy, the medical reality of frostbite always comes to mind.
Oh, that is a fascinating comparison.
It's not just a metaphor. The biological process of freezing maps almost perfectly to what happens to our souls when we live in denial.
I love that framework.
Yeah.
Walk us through the physiological steps of that.
Okay, so think about how frostbite occurs in extreme environments. When your body's exposed to lethal cold, it immediately recognizes a crisis.
Right, the alarm bells go off.
Exactly. And at first, the pain in your extremities, like your fingers and your toes, is just absolute agony.
Because the nerve endings are screaming that tissue is being damaged.
Yes, that is the initial trauma. But if you stay out in the cold, your body executes a survival protocol called vasoconstriction.
Vasoconstriction,
It drastically narrows the blood vessels in your extremities to keep the warm blood entirely focused on your core organs.
Wow. So your body essentially decides to sacrifice your fingers to save your heart.
Exactly. The survival instinct overrides everything else. And here is the truly terrifying part.
What's that?
Once the blood flow stops, the intense pain actually stops. You go completely numb.
Oh, man. So if you don't know any better, you might actually think the danger is past because it doesn't hurt anymore.
Right. You look down, your hands are still attached, so you assume you're perfectly fine.
But underneath the surface, where you can't feel it, ischemia is setting in.
Yes. The cells are literally dying from a lack of oxygen. The absence of pain isn't a sign of healing at all.
No, it's a symptom of profound tissue death.
And that maps so accurately to the architecture of denial, doesn't it?
It really does. We experience a massive emotional trauma, And the pain is so overwhelming that our psyche executes its own emotional vasoconstriction.
We literally cut off emotional circulation to that part of our heart just to survive the day.
And eventually, just like you said, we go completely numb.
And then we walk around saying things like, oh, I'm over it. That divorce from 10 years ago, it doesn't bother me at all.
We honestly think we are fine because the sharp sting is gone.
But the emotional tissue is necrotizing. And here is the catch with frostbite. You cannot selectively numb just one part forever without affecting the whole system.
That is so true.
If you want to save that limb, there is only one medical intervention. You have to undergo rapid rewarming. You have to saw it out.
And medically speaking, the thawing process, which is called reperfusion, is often way more excruciating than the initial.
Oh, it's absolutely agonizing. As the warm blood finally rushes back into those deadened ischemic tissues, the nerve endings just misfire.
It burns, it throbs, the swelling is immense.
But any trauma doctor will tell you that excruciating pain of reperfusion is the only indicator that the tissue is returning to life.
It is the only path to saving the limb.
So applying this to our mental health, when we finally step out of denial, when we let our emotions actually thaw, it is going to hurt terribly.
We are going to feel the backlog of 20 years of grief all at once.
Yeah, but that pain is the literal feeling of life returning to our souls.
I think we need to ground this right here in our own reality for a second, though.
Okay, let's do it.
The temptation to stay frozen isn't just a beginner struggle. Let's look at the culture of church leadership, for instance.
Oh, yes. Let's go there.
There is an immense and often totally unspoken pressure to operate as if you are perpetually thawed and completely healed.
Right. You have to have it all together.
Someone walks up to you in the church lobby, asks how you are doing, and the reflex is just a bright smile and, oh, I'm incredibly blessed. God is so good.
Meanwhile, internally, you might be navigating a brutal conflict in your marriage.
Or a resurgence of clinical depression.
Or a massive temptation toward an old, destructive coping habit.
Exactly. The pressure to freeze the emotion right there in the foyer, just to maintain the veneer of the sorted-out leader, is a staggering temptation.
I have lived that exact moment more times than I can even count.
We all have.
You feel the cold air of panic hitting you, and you just instinctively shut off the circulation to your heart so you can get through the conversation.
And it takes active, exhausting, conscious effort to disrupt that cycle and say, no, I am not going to freeze this.
Right. To say, I am going to feel the terror of this moment.
And this is exactly where the secular self-help model falls apart entirely.
So,
because just feeling the trauma isn't the cure. We don't just thaw out and sit in a puddle of our own agony.
no, that would just be cruelty.
Right. The critical piece of the recovery model is bringing those raw, burning, newly thawed feelings directly to Jesus Christ.
Yes. He is the great physician overseeing the reperfusion process.
Bringing those emotions into the light of Christ is the absolute pivot point of recovery.
Because when we do that, we transition from being victims of our neurology to being active participants in our sanctification.
And as those emotions thaw and the numbness recedes, we suddenly realize we have regained something we lost years ago.
Agency.
Yes. We discover that we actually have a choice in how we respond. We're no longer blindly reacting out of frozen survival instincts.
And discovering that agency leads us directly into what the source materials call the true test of freedom.
Right, because freedom, in this context, isn't about the absence of pain at all.
No, it's about how we utilize our agency once the chains of denial are finally broken.
The definition of freedom, provided in the recovery principles, completely shatters the modern secular definition.
Read that definition for us.
The text states, the basic test of freedom isn't what we're free to do, but what we're free not to do.
I'm going to hypothesize that this single sentence is the most difficult concept for a newly sober or newly recovering person to grasp.
Oh, without a doubt.
The basic test of freedom isn't what we're free to do, but what we're free not to do. That is just so contrary to everything we're taught.
It's difficult because it requires a total rewiring of the brain.
Yeah.
The text uses a very stark, clear example here. It says, in recovery, alcoholics find that they're actually free not to take that next drink.
Which is massive, because when you are in the active, frozen grip of addiction, the concept of choice is just an illusion.
Completely. The neurological urge arises, the habit loop engages, and you simply obey. You are mastered.
The world says freedom is being able to walk into a bar and drink whatever you want without consequence.
But true. Biblical freedom is the God-given capacity to experience the trigger, feel the urge deeply, and possess the power to simply say no.
And if we extrapolate that beyond substance abuse, it applies to the entire spectrum of human brokenness.
Every single hang-up.
True freedom is possessing the God-given power to not launch a verbal grenade when your spouse triggers your insecurity.
Oh, that's a good one.
Or it's the power to not retreat into your office and shut down for 3 days when you feel overwhelmed by expectations.
It's the profound ability to not open that incognito browser.
Yes, to not make the compulsive Amazon purchase just to feel a quick hit of dopamine.
To not send the passive-aggressive email when you feel slighted.
What you are describing is the cultivation of the holy pause.
The holy pause. I love that.
Psychologist Viktor Frankl famously observed that between stimulus and response, there is a space. And in that space lies our freedom to choose.
But when we are mastered by denial, that space does not exist.
No, it's instantaneous. Stimulus equals immediate response.
But as Christ thaws our hearts, the Holy Spirit expands that space. He inserts the holy pause.
He gives us the grace to stand in the gap of our own brokenness and say, I feel the intense neurological and spiritual urge to execute this destructive behavior, but I am free not to do it.
The relief of that realization is just breathtaking.
It is so deeply empowering to recognize that through Christ, we do not owe our dysfunction anything.
We are not contractually obligated to obey our trauma anymore.
I want to ask you, the listener, to run an audit on your own life right now.
Yeah, think about this.
What is the one specific action you feel absolutely compelled to do when the pressure mounts?
When the emotional temperature drops and the stress spikes, what is your default automatic survival reflex?
Now just imagine the sheer lightness of possessing the power simply not to do it.
It is a stunning vision of what life can be.
It really is.
But if we're going to be honest guides through this material, we have to acknowledge the wall that every single human being hits when they try to manifest this freedom.
The wall of our own limitations.
Exactly. Knowing intellectually what we shouldn't do and actually possessing the power to stop ourselves from doing it in the heat of the moment, those are two entirely different universes.
Oh, completely. We can sit here in the safety of the Crosstalk Cafe, drinking our coffee, and agree that we want to utilize the holy pause.
Sure, but tomorrow at 2 p.m., when the crisis hits at work, willpower alone completely disintegrates.
It vaporizes, and I think that's because willpower is essentially just a biological battery.
Yes, it suffers from what psychologists call ego depletion.
Right. Every time you make a decision, every time you suppress a natural reaction, you drain the battery.
By the end of the day, the battery's just dead.
So relying on willpower to cure spiritual brokenness is a complete fool's errand.
Which brings us to perhaps the most empathetic, universally relatable passage of Scripture ever written.
Romans chapter 7, verse 18.
Yes, the Apostle Paul articulated the failure of the human battery perfectly in his letter to the Romans.
It serves as the ultimate diagnostic imaging for the human condition, doesn't it?
It really does. Paul writes, I know that good itself does not dwell in me, that is, in my sinful nature. For I have the desire to do what is good, but I cannot carry it out.
I have the desire to do what is good, but I cannot carry it out.
That is heavy.
When we open this deep dive talking about the bone-deep weariness of trying to fix ourselves, this is the exact verse that captures that exhaustion.
It is the anthem of the exhausted soul. And we really have to remember who was writing this.
Paul was a Pharisee of Pharisees.
Historically speaking, this was a man with more disciplined willpower, more religious rigor, and more structural self-control than anyone alive.
He had completely mastered the art of external behavior modification.
Yet when he looks at the internal reality of his heart, the greatest champion of willpower admits total defeat.
He recognizes the universal truth the recovery text highlights, which is, we all want desperately to do the right thing.
Right. Nobody wakes up on a Thursday morning and plots, I think I will systematically destroy my marriage today.
No, nobody says, I think I'll alienate my children and bankrupt my integrity by 5 p.m.
We start with the absolute best intentions.
We buy the planners, we download the habit tracking apps, we make the tearful Monday morning promises.
This week, I won't lose my temper with the kids.
This week, I won't drink.
This week, I won't isolate. The desire is incredibly genuine.
But then we encounter the tragic, cavernous gap between our genuine intentions and our actual behavior.
The recovery text lays it out with brutal clarity. It says, but because of our hurts, hang-ups, and habits, no matter how hard we try, in our own power, we always fall short.
We end up doing precisely what we really don't want to do.
And let's be super clear about what lives in that gap between intention and action. Yes, that gap is the ultimate breeding ground for profound shame.
It is where the enemy sets up camp, constantly whispering that our inability to fix ourselves means we are fundamentally flawed, hypocritical, and unlovable.
But I'm looking at a very specific phrase in the text you just read, and I think it is the linchpin of the entire problem.
Which phrase is that?
In our own power. We are trying to bridge the gap in our own power.
Oh, wow. Yes.
And this is exactly where the modern self-help industry fails us so completely.
The world's solution to the Romans chapter 7 dilemma is always just more effort.
Try harder. Dig deeper. Find your inner strength. Optimize your morning routine.
But Paul is telling us that the inner strength is exactly what is corrupted. The battery is dead.
The self-help gospel is literally a gospel of self-reliance, which is honestly just another form of idolatry.
We worship at the altar of our own capability.
We genuinely believe that if we just white-knuckle our behavior a little bit longer, we can overcome our sinful nature.
But Paul is looking across the centuries saying, I tried the most extreme version of that experiment. It failed. The good I want to do, I simply cannot carry out.
So if I am putting myself in the shoes of someone hearing this for the very first time, I am deeply unsettled right now.
Yeah, it sounds pretty bleak at first glance.
Because if I desperately want to do good,
Mm-hmm.
but the biblical and psychological reality is that I absolutely cannot carry it out in my own power, where does that leave me?
It sounds like fatalism.
Right. Am I just hopelessly trapped in a cyclical nightmare of wanting to be better, inevitably failing, drowning in shame, and then freezing my emotions just to survive the pain of that failure?
If this story ended in Romans chapter 7, it would be pure fatalism. It feels like hitting a brick wall at 60 miles an hour.
But in the architecture of recovery, hitting that exact wall, coming to the absolute shattering end of your own capability, is actually the greatest news possible.
Help me connect those dots. How is the total destruction of my self-reliance good news?
Because the destruction of self-reliance is the necessary death of the ego. And the death of the ego is the gateway to principle 1. It is the very moment the illusion of control shatters and reality finally breaks through.
The text outlines principle 1 for us, and it is the foundation of everything we do.
Read it for us.
Realize I'm not God. I admit that I'm powerless to control my tendency to do the wrong thing, and that my life has become unmanageable.
Realize I'm not God? I mean, it is almost comical how obvious that sounds when it's spoken out loud.
It really is. Yet, if you audit the way we actually live, the sheer anxiety we carry, the way we try to manipulate outcomes and people just to keep ourselves safe,
You would absolutely conclude that we believe we are running the universe.
we constantly audition for the role of God in our own lives, and we are terrible at the job.
We are the worst at it. Facing the reality that we are not God is the precise moment the recovery journey activates.
It is the ultimate lethal antidote to the denial we discussed in 2 Peter.
Denial looks in the mirror and says, I am the master of my fate. I am my own higher power. I can fix this.
Principle 1 looks in the mirror and says, I am utterly powerless. The battery is completely dead.
When I try to run my life, it descends into unmanageable chaos. I require an intervention from outside of myself.
When we connect this back to the physiological reality of our frozen emotions, Principle 1 changes the entire landscape.
It does, because when we finally admit powerlessness over our broken tendencies, we stop trying to thaw our own emotions.
We stop trying to play vascular surgeon on our own frostbitten soul.
Exactly. We finally drop the scalpel and hand it over to the only one qualified to perform the surgery.
The text gives us this profound, orienting promise. It says, we find freedom to experience our true feelings when we meet Christ and step out of denial.
Jesus Christ is the sole higher power capable of bridging the tragic gap of Romans chapter 7.
He is the one who steps into the agonizing space between our pure desire to do good and our total inability to execute it.
And he doesn't bridge the gap by giving us a better habit tracking app or more willpower.
No, he bridges it by giving us an entirely new nature through the Holy Spirit.
Speaking purely peer-to-peer with you all right now, I cannot overstate the physical and spiritual relief of internalizing principle 1.
Oh, me neither. When I finally surrendered to the fact that I am not God, it was like 1,000-pound weight of concrete was lifted off my chest.
Resigning as the general manager of the universe is literally the most liberating decision a human being can make.
I no longer have to manage everyone's perceptions of me.
I no longer have to tightly control my environment to prevent my own anxiety.
I am free to just be a profoundly broken human being in desperate need of a savior.
The profound exhaustion we identified at the very beginning of this conversation, that weariness comes entirely from the impossible, crushing job of trying to be God.
When we officially resign from that position, we finally enter into rest.
We discover the breathtaking freedom to be weak, knowing that the Apostle Paul also learned that Christ's power is made perfect in our weakness.
It is the most beautiful paradox of the Christian faith.
We locate our ultimate strength solely by admitting our absolute powerlessness.
We find our total freedom by surrendering complete control to Jesus Christ.
But we have to remember, admitting powerlessness is just the entry point.
Right, it's the critical first step, but it is just the beginning of the thawing process.
It is the step that unlocks the door to rooms just like this one.
The Crosstalk Cafe, to authentic, messy community, and to true, lasting, generational healing.
You do not have to carry the exhaustion of denial alone for one more day.
No, you don't. We have spent this time analyzing how hiding our feelings creates a physiological and spiritual deep freeze.
And I want to leave you with this final thought as we close today.
What is that?
What if the specific emotion you are most terrified to feel right now, the exact pain you are spending all your daily energy trying to keep frozen and hidden, is the precise location where Jesus Christ is waiting to meet you?
Wow.
What if that point of greatest terror is actually the threshold where he wants to hand you your freedom back?
That is the exact question we all need to carry with us this week.
It really is.
If you are tired of the exhaustion, if you are ready to stop hiding and begin the painful but beautiful process of thawing out, we want to invite you into this community.
Please come join us.
Join us in person right here at Peters Creek Baptist Church in South Park, Pennsylvania.
We would love to see you.
Here is our weekly Friday schedule. From 5:15 to 6 p.m., we have dinner in the social hall on the final Friday of each month. Large group worship begins at 6:30 p.m. From 7:30 to 8:30 p.m., we break out into our gender-specific small groups. And finally, from 8:30 to 9 p.m., we fellowship right here at the Crosstalk Cafe.
It's the best part of the week.
It really is. We also want to extend a special invitation to you. Our second annual Take Action Night is Friday, March 27th, 2026. Dinner is 5:15 to 6 p.m., followed by worship and communion from 6:30 to 8 p.m.
And if you need to reach out before then, we are here.
Absolutely. If you want to reach out before then, you can email Craig Amstone at craig.amstone@gmail.com or info@pcbc.church.
You don't have to wait until Friday to connect.
Right. You can also visit pcbc.church or find a group near you at crrlocator.com.
Thank you so much for pulling up a chair and doing this deep dive with us today.
Remember, you are unconditionally loved, and we hope you keep coming back.
We will always save a seat for you at the table. May God bless you, and may He grant you the profound courage to step out of denial and into His perfect freedom this week. Keep seeking Him, and we'll talk again soon.